Global conflicts, widespread protests, civil unrest right here in America, contentious presidential campaigns, racial tensions. Ask yourself, is it 2024? Check. Or is it 1968? Check also. Did we just jump into a DeLorean time machine, Back to the Future? Or is history simply repeating itself? Either way, it's a nightmare on repeat. Folks, when you woke up this morning and turned on the news, you may have been confused about what year we're living in. Protesters at Columbia University took over Hamilton Hall in protest of Israel and in support of Hamas. They even renamed the building Hind Hall to honor a young Palestinian who was killed in the Middle East. But back in 1968, same thing happened. Anti-Vietnam War protesters took over the very same building on the same university campus, barricading themselves inside, renamed it Malcolm X Liberation College. Are we reliving 1968 all over again? For reference, the #1 song back in '68 was the terrible Beatles' Hey Jude. North Vietnam's Tet Offensive was launched. RFK was assassinated. 60 Minutes had its first episode ever. And of course, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated.
Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee. Dr. King was standing on the balcony of a second-floor hotel room tonight when, according to a companion, a shot was fired from across the street. In the friend's words, the bullet exploded in his face.
I don't know about you, but I don't want to return to that world. And what's wild is that RFK Jr. in 2024 is eerily taking precautions for a possible assassination attempt on his life, just like his father sadly experienced. This is where we are today. On a lighter note, in 1968, McDonald's Big Mac was released nationwide, and sure, Clint Eastwood's Hang 'em High and Steve McQueen's The Bullet were released. But this doesn't take away from the chaos the nation experienced during that year. But here's the thing. You know who else doesn't want to return to 1968? Joe Biden, the Democrats, and their handlers. You see, the events of 1968 killed LBJ's presidential hopes, ultimately pushing him out of office. The events of this year handed the presidency of 1968, to Richard Nixon, the Republican. In 1960, JFK brought Lyndon Johnson on the ticket, hoping that his age and experience would counter Kennedy's youth and inexperience. In 2008, Obama brought Joe Biden onto the ticket to balance his youth and inexperience, but Obama quickly learned that there's nothing that Joe Biden couldn't screw up, and that wasn't the word Obama used. He dropped an F-bomb. In 1964, Johnson's campaign attacked Republican Barry Goldwater, calling him mentally unstable. They said that a Goldwater presidency would lead to World War III. You might remember this Johnson commercial.
Daryl. These are the stakes. To make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other or we must die.
In 2020, Biden ran as the only person who could stop the threat of Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he'd take us into World War III and end democracy. Somehow, to this day, the left still believes that.
Donald Trump wants to ruin the institutions in this country. He wants to destroy democracy. He wants to change what you are used to in this country.
We need to be very, very realistic about the grave impacts of a Donald Trump election. It is not a joke. It is not a game. We need to protect our democracy, and ideally, it's going to be on progressive values.
I saw this video of all these young MAGA guys celebrating Trump and Bubba. Well, you know what? You guys will be draft age.
Oh, my gosh. Same tactics, same strategy, but in both cases, voters have a case of buyer's remorse. Jimmy Carter is thrilled that he's no longer at the bottom because Joe Biden now carries that mantle. And just like in 1968, Americans are becoming concerned that Joe Biden, like Johnson, is unable to deal with the violence in U.S. cities. Why? Well, Sleepy Joe cares more about what flavor ice cream he gets after dinner than the chaos happening in this country. Even Joe Scarborough at MSNBC can see the parallels with 1968, and the left should be worried.
You know, it's what happened with Nixon in '68. I didn't bring this up before.
It's such a good point.
My parents were Democrats. '68 changed them. The '68 chaos changed them. The Democratic convention and the chaos on the street. My family's like, enough of this.
Listen to this.
Enough of this. This isn't who we are.
Biden is watching as the left turns against him. In the end, the Democrat National Convention in Chicago cemented Nixon's win. Rioters outside the convention reminded voters of the disorder Johnson and the Democrats had allowed to fester in the country. Richard Nixon promised to change that with law and order and ran on calming the chaos. Joe Biden is unable and unwilling to deal with disorder in this country. He prefers to cater to the trans agenda and the pro-Hamas protesters. He couldn't care less about the concerns of real Americans. Donald Trump has shown himself to understand America's frustration. He appears in Harlem and is cheered by blacks and Hispanics who normally are Democrat voters.
I love you, Trump! I love you, Trump! I love you, Trump! We love 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 Trump!
Now that the reception is real, and you can see that real Americans love a real leader, Joe Biden, just like Johnson, are both seen as weak leaders as the country falls into chaos. And just as we saw with Nixon, Americans know Donald Trump will eliminate the chaos. But only one question remains. Will Biden make it to the ballot in November, or will the Democrat Party, sensing defeat, force his retirement and replace him with Michelle Obama? Maybe even Gavin Newsom. Only time will tell. And by the way, folks, I didn't mention that earlier. 1968 DNC convention was in Chicago. Guess where it is in 2024? Chicago.